The term trout refers to several different species in the Salmonidae family. Other members of the family include salmon, char, graylings, and whitefishes. Researchers recognize 15 different species, which they place in the taxonomic genuses Salmo, Oncorhynchus, and Salvelinus. Description of the trout. Each of the different species of trout looks slightly different from the last. However, all of the various species have elongated bodies, often peppered with small spots. Their coloration varies from dark brown to silver, and many have hues of pink, red or yellow as well. Size also varies drastically by species. While many measure about a foot or so long, some reach lengths up to 4 feet or more. Interesting facts about the trout. These fish have a number of different traits and adaptations. Learn more about what makes a few specific species unique, below. The first one, lake trout. People catch this species extensively, particularly while fly fishing. In fact, people enjoy fishing for this species, so much that they have introduced it outside of its native range of Europe. You can now find this fish in the United States, Patagonia, New Zealand, and more. The second one, rainbow trout. Another species popular with fishermen, this fish gets its name from the iridescent hues on its scales. Researchers currently recognize 15 different subspecies. These subspecies differ in appearance and behavior. Some live their entire lives in freshwater, while others only return to freshwater to spawn. The third one, brook trout. Humans breed this species with the lake trout. Their hybrid offspring, known as splake or slake, have unique patterns on their scales and grow quite quickly. Unlike many hybrids, splake can reproduce successfully, but this happens infrequently. The fourth one, cutthroat trout. You can easily recognize this species by the reddish hue of the scales beneath its chin, hence the name cutthroat. The state fish of Wyoming, this species ranges in freshwater habitats of the Pacific Northwest. Researchers recognize 15 different subspecies. Habitat of the trout. Though the various species and subspecies have different preferences, you can generally find these fish in freshwater habitats. Like other members of the Salmonidae family, some species have anadromous habits, which means that they live in saltwater during their adult lives and return to freshwater to spawn. Typically, these fish occupy streams, lakes, creeks, and rivers with cool temperatures. Distribution of the trout. Different species have different distributions. Each has its own unique range, though the populations of some species do overlap. Some species live in North America, and some in Eurasia. Humans have also introduced various species outside of their native ranges, and you can now also find these fish in Australia, New Zealand, and more. Diet of the trout. Most of the various species have carnivorous feeding habits. They hunt for smaller fish, and a variety of invertebrates. Generally, adults hunt for fish, while juveniles rely on smaller invertebrates while they grow. Some of the different prey that they consume include insects, insect larvae, fish eggs, fish larvae, shrimp, worms, and more. Trout and human interaction. Humans interact with many different species in this group. People target several species as popular game fish. This activity impacts different species to different degrees. Some species or subspecies face decline because of fishing pressure. They also suffer from habitat destruction, pollution, and climate change. Domestication. Humans have not domesticated this fish in any way. Does the trout make a good pet? People do not generally keep these fish as pets. For them to thrive, they need extremely large tanks, often 1,000 gallons or more. This makes it quite impractical to keep them in home aquariums. Trout care. Aquariums house these fish in large tanks. They thrive in environments with plenty of space, other fish for them to school with, and places to hide. Many aquariums provide artificial logs, trees, or roots for the fish to shelter under. They also frequently keep them with schools of similar-sized fish of other species. Behavior of the trout. Most of the different species have social behavior and live in groups known as schools. However, some species school as juveniles and live primarily alone as adults. Some solitary species also live near a home territory such as a cave or hole. Many species migrate to spawning grounds during the breeding season. Reproduction of the trout. These fish begin breeding migrations based on water temperature. The female finds a likely spot for a nest, usually in a gravel substrate. She then creates a small depression in the gravel, lays her eggs, and then the male fertilizes the eggs. Cool facts about trout fish. First, 1. What type of animal is a trout? The second one, the trout is a type of freshwater fish commonly found in the wild in cool streams and lakes. The third one, what class of animal does a trout belong to? Trout is a type of freshwater fish in wildlife, under the kingdom Animalia, family Salmonidae, genus Oncorhynchus. The scientific names differ based on the type of trout in question, such as rainbow trout or steelhead trout, cutthroat trout. Other types are brown trout, brook trout, sea trout, tiger trout, lake trout. Fourth one, how many trouts are there in the world? Trout conservation status is not evaluated by the IUCN Red List, and therefore there are no records of the trout's current population trend in the wild. However, rainbow trout, brown trout, brook trout, and other such trout are popular for fly fishing enthusiasts as game fish. They are constantly restocked in open waters and bred in fish farms or fisheries. The fifth one, where does a trout live? Trout can be commonly found in freshwaters such as cool streams, rivers, and lakes. Rainbow trout are commonly found in rivers and streams in North America and Asia. Brook trout are found in Northeast America and Canada. Brown trout are common in the Arctic region. The sixth one, what is a trout's habitat? Trout prefer to live in freshwaters such as cool and clear fresh streams, lakes, and rivers. Some species of the trout in wild also are migratory in nature and travel thousands of miles to feed, reproduce, or for other reasons. They are naturally found in streams and rivers in North America, Asia, and Europe. Example rainbow trout are commonly found in North America and Asia, and brown trout are common in the Arctic region. They were introduced in the regions of Australia and New Zealand by fishing enthusiasts in the 19th century for fishing purposes. Trout are also bred in fish farms or fisheries for purposes of trade and food. The seventh one, who do trouts live with? Trout fish in wildlife can be found in freshwater in schools, similar to other types of native fish. The eighth one, how long does a trout live? Depending on the native species in wildlife, the lifespan can differ. Rainbow trout fish can live up to 7 years, whereas lake trout can live for several decades. The average range is between 4 to 6 years. Ninth one, how do they reproduce? Trouts such as rainbow trout, brown trout, sea trout, brook trout, etc. are usually 3 to 4 years old when they spawn. Spawning is the process of releasing or depositing eggs into the water by aquatic creatures. Depending on the type and habitat of native trouts such as rainbow trout or brown trout, they migrate upstream to find an ideal spot to spawn their eggs. The spawning process occurs during the months of March and April. At this time, both the water temperatures and water levels need to rise in order for the eggs to successfully spawn. The female trout scrapes a nest in gravel, and a few male trout accompany her in this process. The males lay side by side with the female trout in the middle, and they simultaneously release the sperm and eggs for spawning. The female then covers the eggs with the gravel she had removed during the scraping process. She will keep spawning until all her eggs are released. Trout do not monitor or take care of the nest, or the eggs once they spawn. A female trout can spawn anywhere between 400 to 3,000 eggs in one cycle into gravel, depending on her size. The process for the embryo to develop takes between 20 to 80 days time depending on external factors such as water temperature. Once the eggs hatch they are called alevins. These alevins will feed in the stream or lake until they begin to grow. The success of the reproduction cycle is naturally more, where trout fish are bred in fish farms, as opposed to the wild native fish. Next one, what is their conservation status? The conservation status of trout is not evaluated by the IUCN Red List. Rainbow trout, brown trout, brook trout, and tiger trout are very popular game fish in North America, Europe, Asia, New Zealand, and Australia. They are used in food dishes, and because of this, they are bred in fish farms and constantly replenished in open waters in the wild for fly fishing purposes. Young trout fishing threatens this fish species. So, today we are talking some details about trout fish. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more.